We really need to talk about evil and just how overused and misused the idea of other people being evil really is. As you know, we are quite polarized in America, and we often think that people on the other side of contentious issues believe what they believe or do what they do for evil or malicious reasons. This needs to change, not only because it makes it very difficult to work together with those who disagree with us, but also because, in the majority of cases, it simply isn't true. But even beyond that, I really think we need to stop using evil as an explanation for why anyone, even those who commit atrocities, do bad things. This is Thoughtful Beetle, and today we're addressing the concept of evil and how it's applied as part 3 of a 4-part toolkit on critical thinking. Parts 1 and 2 on how to find a good source and why common sense is overrated are in the description below. To understand why it's often inaccurate to assume that other people have evil intentions and what I think we should do instead, there's a couple of ideas from psychology and philosophy that it's very helpful to go over. First is Hanlon's razor, which is honestly one of the most useful tools that I've ever encountered for how to look at the world. Hanlon's razor states that you should never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity. Now, it might be a little harsh to say it's necessarily stupidity, so I'd rephrase it just a little bit and say, basically, you shouldn't assume that anyone is being intentionally mean or cruel unless you have very good reason to believe so. As a side note, Hanlon's razor, like other philosophical razors, is called a razor because it allows you to shave off unlikely explanations, which saves you time and hopefully brings you closer to the truth. An example of Hanlon's razor could be someone who is pro-choice. They likely don't hold that view because they believe human life doesn't have worth, but rather that a woman has the right to decide how her body should be used or not used, or because they don't think a fetus should be viewed the same as a person. Similarly, someone who is pro-life likely doesn't think that women should not be allowed to make choices, but rather that a fetus should be viewed as a person, and you shouldn't be allowed to choose to take someone's life even if it has negative effects on you. In either case, it can be easy to not give someone else the benefit of the doubt, and to view the other side as holding a belief because they are callous and cruel, and not because they have reasons for their beliefs. Now, it's important to note that Hanlon's razor tells us not to assume malice, but rather to assume ignorance or stupidity. And while I don't think that's necessarily the case either, it does point out the fact that people might not hold views because of malice, but they do have them for very bad reasons. They could have wildly inconsistent views, or views that are not factually true at all. But confronting someone with bad beliefs but good intentions is a world of difference from confronting someone with bad beliefs and bad intentions. Hanlon's razor allows us to approach people more empathetically and try to reason with them instead of simply writing them off as unreachable and evil. As a final note on Hanlon's razor, probably the area where I see people incorrectly assuming malice the most is when they assume other people are lying. So often, human error, miscommunication, or misunderstood differences in opinion are instead taken to be signs that the other person is a liar. This can be a quite slippery slope as well, because once you assume other people are lying instead of being honestly mistaken or confused, it can easily devolve into mistrust of anything that does not agree with you. With many conspiracy theories, a big part of the problem is the constant assumption that anything that doesn't fit the narrative is part of a cover-up. So, be particularly aware of Hanlon's razor if you think someone is lying, and strongly consider other, more innocent reasons why they appear to be untruthful. So, with Hanlon's razor, we assume the other person isn't evil, they're just wrong. But why are they wrong if it's not because they're evil? Well, there's 2 ideas from psychology that are closely related to Hanlon's razor that are very helpful with this. And they are the fundamental attribution error and the correspondence bias. The fundamental attribution error states that we tend to underestimate the effect of situational factors on human behavior. As an example, we think they stole money because they are immoral, but don't consider that they stole because they needed to pay off bills and keep their family from going hungry. We assume that things others do are explained by their character and not by their circumstances. The correspondence bias says that we perceive that others have stable personality traits based on their behavior, even when that behavior was caused by situational factors. An example of the correspondence bias could be that as part of a debate class, you were assigned to give a pro-life speech, while a classmate is assigned to give a pro-choice speech. Because you gave that speech, you are viewed as more pro-life, and your classmate is viewed as more pro-choice, even though other people know that the position you defended was assigned to you. They assume that your personality, being pro-choice or pro-life, is reflected by your actions, giving the speech, even though they know your actions were situational, being assigned a side to defend. Now, these two aren't the same, but for our purposes it's easier to lump the two together. The fundamental attribution error and the correspondence bias both broadly state that situational factors have a great deal of influence on why people do the things they do. And often, we don't recognize this fact, and instead assume that people do the things they do because of their nature or their character. So, with the fundamental attribution error and the correspondence bias, we understand more of the mechanism for why Hanlon's razor is true. When other people are wrong, it's probably not because of their character, and more likely is because of their circumstances. This encourages us to understand people better and not leap to judgment nearly as quickly. Okay, but what about people who are obviously evil? What about Nazis? Surely the people who carried out the Khmer Rouge or the genocides in Rwanda and Bosnia and Darfur are evil and malicious beyond a shadow of a doubt. Well, not exactly. A good source that addresses this is the book Worse Than War by Daniel Jonah Goldhagen, or probably more accessibly, there's a PBS documentary by the same name. In it, Goldhagen goes out and he interviews people who were actually involved in genocides, who went out and actually killed other people, and they discuss why they did it. It's really unnerving to see ordinary people who look totally normal talking about the horrible things that they have done on camera. And there's a common theme running through all these different killers and all these different genocides. And that is that, yes, they truly had hatred for the people they were trying to exterminate. But that hatred is born of fear and a perceived sense of self-preservation. The killers truly believed that if they didn't go out and exterminate this other group, they themselves would be harmed or maybe even killed. So to them, their actions were in service of a greater good, and the brutality was ultimately justified. These aren't people who are evil by nature. They're you and me, except with very bad circumstances and very bad ideas. In the Nuremberg trials, when Nazi high command were tried for war crimes, there was an attempt to psychoanalyze them to determine what was wrong with them to cause them to be so evil. When asked about the mental state of Nazi high command, however, the leading psychiatrist, Dr. Douglas Kelley, said, "In general, the prisoners are no different from a group of intelligent executives anywhere. In contradistinction to popular opinion, they are neither crazy nor are they supermen." Kelley's interpreter, Howard Triest, had something similar to say. You could sit next to a person, and if you really didn't know what that person had done or why they were incarcerated, they looked perfectly normal. The Nazis resembled executives or normal people because in actuality, that's what they truly were. Even in the most extreme of cases, Hanlon's razor, the fundamental attribution error, and the correspondence bias still apply. And here, they are more important than ever. So with all that in mind, I think we need to take this even a little bit further. And here there's a very fine line. Calling out actions as evil or bad is a good thing to do and certainly justifiable. Calling out people who knowingly and maliciously participate in these actions evil can also be a good thing, but we need to be very careful for all the reasons we just went over. But explaining why people commit evil actions by saying because the people are evil is not just not useful, it's actively harmful. It's harmful because saying people commit evil actions because they are evil has zero explanatory power or utility. It makes evil actions into an inevitability that has to be defeated in conflict instead of something to be understood and prevented. If there's anything to learn from genocides and from the Nazis, it's the need to ask what causes people to commit evil, what factors led them to their actions, and how did they justify it to themselves. If instead we just say that people do bad things because they are evil, we miss the chance to understand and prevent them from doing those terrible things in the first place. When we don't assume that evil people are evil by nature, suddenly we realize there are things we can do other than wait for evil to arise. We give ourselves the opportunity to proactively prevent evil actions. We can provide education and opportunities to prisoners. We can slowly stop criminalizing drug use and start providing actual therapy and rehab. We can set up the correct situations to make the most evil of regimes into some of our closest allies. And, on a small scale, maybe we can change the mind of someone around us who holds some pretty awful beliefs. We don't defeat evil. Instead, we start to prevent evil from taking off in the first place. So, give people the benefit of the doubt when it comes to interpreting why they do actions that you see as bad. Understand that background and circumstance play a huge role in determining why we do what we do, and that even the most evil of people probably have justifications behind their actions, even if those justifications are horribly misguided and wrong. See evil for what it actually is, which is usually a series of bad reasons and justifications that can ultimately be addressed and prevented, and not as an inherent character flaw of the people you disagree with. By viewing things this way, you can better understand your enemies, better understand their actions, and hopefully find some common ground. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think about assuming good intentions and the nature of evil, and if you think Hanlon's razor really is true in practice. And I'll see you next time.